Hello everyone, William here from 222 Productions, and I am here to talk to you about the Dallas Qualifier episode of American Ninja Warrior Season 10 in approximately 20 minutes or less, starting now. So, this was the big season premiere, the official season premiere of American Ninja Warrior Season 10, and it was a bit of a weird one in that it was one of those episodes where it's like, there was a lot of things that probably shouldn't like, but I ended up liking anyway despite of that. Like, you know, for example, the bouncing spider was on the course. Not a big fan of that obstacle from last season, if you might remember. But just to kind of go through the course a bit for the qualifiers, we of course had the floating steps, followed by catch and release, which was this weird obstacle where like they had to hold on this pole and then they had to swing onto it. The swing is the same length of the pole. It's horizontal. They got to get it into this catching device, which is a bit unusual for American Ninja Warrior. They had to transfer to a second pipe and then transfer to a landing platform, and that platform had a net on it also that you can catch yourself with. It's an alright obstacle. Although apparently it took out a lot of people. Apparently, out of 106 competitors, it took 30 people out. And 6 of them didn't even make it, so it took out 30% of the people who attempted it. That's a big number for a second obstacle. It's also worth mentioning that this was the second second regional that was filmed. Even though they aired it first, LA was actually the first one, so I imagine the whole Jurassic Park tie-in was part of the reason why. After the catch and release was the bouncing spider, which, again, I mentioned just like last year. It's the same obstacle. Not a fan of it. For those of you who don't know, you got to hit a springboard. You go into a spider walk. There's like a gap there, and then you got to drop down, hit a super tramp, grab onto a pole, grab onto like a series of poles that are hanging, like big blocking bags, and then transfer from that to the landing platform. Bit of a hodgepodge obstacle, which is, I think, part of the reason why I'm not the biggest fan of it. And then you had the tuning forks, which are these 3 sets of obstacles that rotate this way as you try to walk across them, like this. And the big thing is that the platforms themselves, they got a little curve, got a little angle on top of them. So you got to run across. You got to be careful because they can spin on you. That took out a lot of people too. 22 people failed that, and that actually ended up being the cutoff point, which is interesting because the 5th obstacle was crank it up. Which when I first started watching the episode, I was kind of like, oh, I bet you the reason crank it up is the 5th position is because they don't want a situation where the cutoff is the 4th obstacle again, like the last time Crank It Up appeared, which ended up happening anyway. And then, of course, we have the 2 warped walls, regular warped wall and the mega warped wall, which is 18 feet tall. You get $10,000 if you complete it, but if you don't complete it, you only get 1 shot at the normal warped wall, as opposed to the normal 3. And really, though, like, in terms of moving on to the next round, it's, there's almost no reason not to go for the 10,000, quite frankly. Because the cutoff point is always failing the warped wall. The cutoff point is always failing the 5th obstacle, typically, or 4th, even. The other big change is that there are no POM Wonderfuls anymore. POM Wonderful no longer a sponsor. So you don't have the spoilerific POM Wonderful Run of the Night anymore, which is good. I know Jeep is a big sponsor now, although unfortunately they don't hand out free Jeeps to people in the crowd, which that would have been nice. Although I guess for one last time, a toast to POM Wonderful for all your years of sponsorships. Here's to you, buddy. I can't do that joke anymore, unfortunately. That's why I did it one more time. So, as for the show itself, in terms of presentation, this had like a lot of that stuff I liked, stuff I didn't like, and this is one of those things where it's like I shouldn't have liked this episode, but I did. Maybe it's because it was the season premiere and got me a little excited because of that. But like, they start off with Dallas cheerleaders and a bull on the course, which is it's a bull. But one of the things that really caught my eye was that they upped their budget for these profile pieces, in which I immediately thought, oh man, look at all that money they're wasting on something that doesn't really matter and arguably makes the show worse. If you look at the ratings sometimes. Anyway, I don't know. It's debatable what's causing the ratings to go down a bit. But I do think they put a bit too much emphasis on profile pieces to the show's detriment. Like I know the show is about people just as much as about obstacle courses, but you need a balance, and I think it's a bit too unbalanced at the moment. Like with the Quest O'Neill, I think is a good example. Like they put a lot of effort. They got a projector screen. They did like this all fancy production about her life and her parents, how tough her life was. And then when she's running the course, Men Eisman mentioned one of the things that they mentioned was like, oh, she was a course tester last year, and that like she doesn't have like the typical build of a Ninja Warrior. And quite frankly, out of all the stuff they said about her, I think like not having the typical build for a Ninja Warrior was like the most interesting part of her story. And that's one of the parts they emphasized the least about. All this other stuff that they said about her really doesn't matter in terms of her ability to do the course. But the body stuff, that ties into the show, into what the actual purpose of the show is. And so, yeah. I think that would have been better to focus on instead of the other stuff. Quest ended up doing well. She made it to Crank It Up, which put her in the top 30. They put a lot of emphasis on Matisse Owahi, the kid, as he's known as. Matisse, for those of you who don't remember, he was originally on Team Ninja Warrior College Madness, and then he competed on the most recent season of Ninja vs. Ninja, possibly the last season of Ninja vs. Ninja. Sorry, that was mean. I gotta say, though, they fooled me. Because, like, between the previews and like all the emphasis, like, oh, he's 19 years old, you gotta watch out for this kid. I thought he was gonna go up the warped wall. From the commercials, I thought he made it, the mega wall to specify, and he didn't. He got really close, but he couldn't make it up the mega wall, and they fooled me. But he still cleared, so good for him. One of the competitors that they emphasized was Karen Wilton, I should say. 39-year-old woman, they really specified that whole thing. She ended up being the best performance of all the women, failing at Crank It Up. Really impressive. I think one of those people that like really surprised a lot of people, kind of just going in. It was nice to see Abel Gonzalez on the course again. I wasn't a big fan of his profile, but like that's not his fault. He was able to save himself on the bounce spider. Had a bit of a scare there, but he ended up clearing. So it's good for him. I like Abel, seeing him do well. One other thing I want to mention about the whole idea, I'm going around it all around, is production. In this particular episode, is seeing fast forward segments where people make it further than the full runs had. There were a few people like Kevin Kline, who had Dallas cheerleaders with him, and Karsten Williams. Like they showed them filling the tuning forks, but at the time which these runs were shown, no one who had gone a full run or even abbreviated run had even made it to the tuning forks. So a bit of a weird in terms of editing and presenting things. And then also they had this woman early on that kind of represents, I guess, like some of the bad side of A&W that, like, I guess I put it in the category of like I should have liked this episode less than I did. Dr. Favia Dubik. Like here's the thing. Again, just want to stress nothing against her. Like the fact that she survived cancer, That is great. But, like, they advertised. She was one of the people they advertised heavily before the show started. They made it look like she was going to go far, and then she failed the second obstacle. And I'm just, it's one of those profiles that kind of like, yeah, it's like a bit of like a Captain Tornado sort of thing. You know, I still think the whole Captain Tornado kind of basically exposed the A&W a bit when they did that on SNL. The other thing about Dr. Favia is that she kept screaming on the course, and then after she failed, she screamed again, which is like that's a profile in of itself. And it's like, why was she doing that? Like, I can scream like that too. At least I used to. Maybe not as loud as she can. I used to be able to do it louder than I could, but like, yeah. That is, I don't know what was up with that. Very weird. Very weird. But speaking of weird, but in a good way, I do want to talk about Chris Cambre, the Bayou Ninja. He was wearing shrimp boots on the course. And that's one of those things where it's like, it could either go one of two ways. Either it's going to end up being really cool when he does that, or he's going to look really dumb when the boots cost him. But they did not. They're rubber boots. They probably have some pretty good traction to it. He ended up failing Crank It Up, which is an obstacle that has absolutely nothing to do with his feet. So you can't blame him. And then, in a rather comical sense, he poured the water out of his boots. I really appreciate that. So one of the things that I think was definitely a negative is that they kept mentioning Kacy Catanzaro. And like, she retired. And I'm just like, come on, guys. I didn't think we needed the Kacy counter anymore. But, like, they kept promoting Kacy. They were like, oh, look, remember the time she went up the warped wall and then cleared the city's finals course in Dallas 4 years ago in A&W 6? It's like, guys, she's retired. She's gone. She's not coming back. Yeah, she was in the audience, but, like, no, we don't need this. You're not doing, like, what is this supposed to accomplish? Like, here's the thing. What does it benefit A&W anymore to bring up Kacy? Right? Like, how does it benefit the show anymore? It doesn't. Because she doesn't compete anymore. They can't advertise that she's going to compete. They kind of, I don't remember if they mentioned ahead of time she was going to do commentary, but she did commentary for Brent Steffensen's run, which, kind of a poor, I don't know if I want to say poor Brent, but like, they've kind of reduced Brent to like Kacy's ex-boyfriend, which they've been split up for like, what was it, 2 years now? I think it was 2 years, yeah. Yeah, because it was in between 7 and 8. So, like, she's been reduced to Brent being Kacy's ex-boyfriend. Meanwhile, Kacy is like, you know, the first woman to make it up the warped wall in A&W history. It is, and then, like, with Brent's profile, they mentioned, like, that same year Kacy did that. He had his worst year ever. And she's doing commentary, and it's like, I mean, good for them that they're still friends, you know. Imagine if they broke up on something where, like, they just hate each other for something. I don't know. Like, I'm not getting into the private lives, but just, like, imagine if after the breakup they legitimately hated each other. Imagine how awkward the commentary would be for Kacy to do that. But Brent ended up surprisingly going out on the tuning forks. He still moved on because he was fast enough, and a lot of people failed early on this course. But just it's so bizarre that they had Kacy do the commentary for Brent. Like, why not do it for Barclay, who has said many times that she was inspired by Kacy? Speaking of Barclay, let's talk about her run. She had Nastia Lucen, who she trained on Celebrity Ninja Warrior in the crowd. She had a scary bounce on the bouncing spider. The way she bounced, she didn't get like a lot of horizontal movement. She got a lot of vertical movement instead. It legit looked like she might have missed, but she didn't, thankfully. But she ended up going out on the tuning forks. And again, in a bit of a weird editing decision, She did her profile with Christine, and there was this whole like, oh, she might not move on. And then as soon as they came back from commercial break, they were like, oh, hey, all these women failed, which means Barclay moves on. And it's like, I mean, you couldn't save that until like the end of the show? I don't know. Not a lot of drama. One commercial break. Like, what? So they did Jon Stewart. He cleared the course. Great to see that. Opening up a bakery. It was really good to see someone. He's still kicking around. And then the final competitor that I want to talk about is Daniel Gill. Daniel Gill. They reused the Hurricane Harvey story that they used for Ninja vs. Ninja, and he ended up not only getting the fastest time of the night, but he got the $10,000 mega wall. Only person all episode to do so. I was actually pretty surprised that he was the only person to do that. And they claimed him that to be the first person to get up the mega wall, which is, I mean, they filmed Dallas second, so unless no one cleared the mega wall in LA, that's not true. So yeah, a bit weird that they did that. But before I run down the stats and the top 30, just a few people I wanted to mention. April Steinel Bennett, who you might remember from Ninja vs. Ninja as part of the All-American Ninjas. She actually broke her ankle on the tuning forks, which would have been good enough to make it to the top 5 women had she not been injured and had to forfeit her spot. Also, Jeremiah Morgan, Andrew Swinghammer, both completed, but did not get shown at all during this episode. Jeremiah Morgan being like a big thing because like he made it to stage 3 before, and not a lot of people can claim that. So it would have been nice if they mentioned up. And one other name that I wanted to mention was Steven Tucker from Ultimate Beastmaster, one of the original people to get the title of Beastmaster in season 1 of the show. He competed, and he didn't get shown in this episode, but he did make it in the top 30. So, just kind of run down the course and the episode a little bit. There was a total of 106 runs. We saw 12 full runs on this episode, one run that was shown mid-progress, 27 fast-forwards, and 10 clears were shown. However, in reality, looking at the top 30 here, we have 13 completions, being Daniel Gill, who cleared the mega wall, Matthew Day, Josh Salinas, Matisse Owahi, Thomas Stillings, Jeremiah Morgan, Andrew Swinghammer, Abel Gonzalez, Tyler Humphrey, Kevin Jordan, Tremaine Dortch, Mike Murray, Jon Stewart. Then we had one person who failed the warped wall, and in this case, he was someone who failed to clear the mega wall and then failed his one attempt at the warped wall, that being Ven Johns. And then we got 12 people who failed to crank it up in Andrew Lowe's, who once again didn't get shown at all, despite making it to stage 2 last year and being generally good. Nate Burkhalter, Steven Tucker, Chris Cambry, Josh Norton, Andrew Sturr, Dylan Lancaster, Victor Gonzalez, Louis Moore, Eric Brown, Karen Wilton, and Quest O'Neill. And finally, we wrap up the top 30 with 4 people who failed the tuning forks and got there fast enough, and Karsten Williams, Brent Steffensen, Brian Burkholt, and Elliot Jovette. And then finally, to round out the top 5 women, we have Barclay Stockett and Brittany Hanks, who failed the tuning forks, and Kat Radcliffe, who failed the bouncing spider. And that is all I have to say. So, what did you think of the Dallas Qualifier? Did the A&W season get off to a good start for you? Let me know in the comments below, and if you like what you saw, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time for the Los Angeles Qualifiers, where we walk the dinosaur with Jurassic Park Night. Until then, see you everyone.